in 1 year with Uchido Ai. I trust you're having a great day. I am. So, you're welcome. So, if you're joining me for the first time, this is the Bible in 1 year podcast where we talk about the Bible from cover to cover. I just read it, I share the scriptures in the description box, and then I retell the stories and dramatize them. I'm doing this because I want to get to know more about the Bible. I want to see it for myself, draw my own conclusions, and make my own interpretations. And then I want to test the theories and philosophies that are there. I want to discard the things that are not there. And I've discovered that the Bible has layers. In other words, there's the basic story of the story that I can just retell to you. But I found out that when I actually take time to study and meditate on what I'm reading, what seems like a basic story about a man and his wife takes on a whole new meaning. But for the purposes of this podcast, I just retell the stories, share some insights that I have, thoughts that I have. I may agree, I may disagree, but that's the whole idea. Every single day we use the structured content from this reading guide, known as the Daily Bible Reading Guide, where we look at an Old Testament, a New Testament, a Psalm, and a Proverb. So, if you've been following me for any length of time, you see I'm a bit made up today. That's because so what I have not really shared is that even though I'm an architect, I have like a regular architecture profession and I work. I also am a co-host. I do that part-time. I'm a co-host for a show at the Christian Broadcasting Network of Nigeria, which is an arm of 700 Club, which is the mother body of 700 Club. 700 Club is one of the programs. So this program that I co-host for is known as the Viral Virtue Show. So we have seasons and we have production runs. So we've been doing some production runs, and today we ended. I think this is season three or season four. I can't even remember anymore because I missed one season when my health. Anyway, so so that's why I'm all made up today and I'm feeling pretty. I'm feeling pretty. We're done for the day, so I couldn't shoot this video at the time I was supposed to shoot. But today's episode is really interesting and you should stay put to hear how it turns out. So today we're looking at First Chronicles 16 to 18. And we're looking at Romans chapters 2, and we're looking at Proverbs 19, verses 8 to 9. So, just because there's a lot to tell, a lot of interesting, juicy stories in the Old and the New Testaments, I'd like to start with the Proverbs. I just read the Proverbs. I don't really share insights from it. So, Proverbs 19, 8 to 9 says, "He who gets wisdom loves his own soul, and he who keeps understanding will find good. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies shall perish." So that's our Proverbs today. I forgot to add that I lace my conversations and dramatize with Nigerian humor. I hope that you find it. I hope that you find it interesting. Okay, so I'm looking at my notes today because there's a lot that happened, and I think I need to stick with the to stick with the story, So First Chronicles 16 chapters 30 and verses 37 to chapters 18 verse 17. If you recall, yesterday they brought in the ark and placed it in the tent. So there was a lot of pomp and pageantry yesterday. If you remember, yesterday was also the day that Michal, David's first wife, saw him throwing himself with reckless abandon and scorned him in her heart. Look at this clown, fool. Anyway, so with all of that and bringing the ark into Jerusalem and keeping it where it was meant to be kept. Hello, I see you. Say something in the comments below. All right, so regular worship was established. So this is just quickly, me running through. 68 people, including Obed Edom, were made gatekeepers. Gatekeepers covered. I talked about gatekeepers three episodes ago. So you want to know what a gatekeeper is? Go check it. Zadok was made the priest who offered sacrifices morning and evening according to the book now, because they found the book and they want to stick with the book at Gibeon. Heman and Co, I didn't bother to list all the people that were listed, were put to give thanks and praise God. I remember I told you 2 episodes ago that the musicians were treated like celebrities. They had no other work other than to sing. So Heman and Co were positioned to sing and give thanks to God. The people departed, and David also departed from the temple and went to his own house and blessed his household. David pretty much behaved like a priest, really, he really did. Anyway, sometime later, David told Nathan that he was feeling some type of way, that the ark was still under a tent and he had built his own house, was living lavishly. He felt like he needed to do something extra for God. And so Nathan said, all right, go ahead. I support you in whatever you want to do. However, when Nathan went to bed, or when Nathan went to pray about it, God called Nathan and said, no, David will not build me that house. I have never dwelt, so that's where I have to stick with my notes now, because I need to follow this story. It's very interesting. God says to Nathan, let me switch up my voice a bit. I have never dwelt in a house before, but I've dwelt in tent from tent to tent since I came out of Egypt. Since I was built in the wilderness, since I brought you people out of Egypt, I dwelt from tabernacle to tabernacle. I have never asked, have I ever asked for a house? Tell David this. Possibly he was saying this, I've never asked for a house before. So for David to even think this at all, go tell David. I have some information for him. You go tell David. I can't keep up with the deep voice. Sorry, guys. You go tell David, I took you from the sheepfold, from the backside of the desert, to be ruler over my people. I have been with you and cut off all your enemies. I made your name great like other great men. In other words, you were just an ordinary guy. And thank you, Khalid Lee. Thank you. You're just an ordinary guy, but I've made you great. I've made you great. I appointed a place for Israel and planted them there so that they would settle and not be moving around any longer. Any longer again. And they would stay where no one would oppress them. I gave them judges to help lead them. And I will subdue your enemies and build you a house. Like, you want to build me a house? Me? I will build you a house, boy. I brought you out from the desert, from the backside of the desert. I made you great. I gave you power. I removed all your enemies. I cut them off from before you. I am the one to build you a house. So let me tell you what I'm going to do. You even think, have I ever asked for a house? Yes, you went ahead to think this. I'm impressed. David, you're my guy. You're a man after my heart. So God continues to speak. He says, I will build you a house. And when the time comes for you to go with your ancestors, your seed will be sitting on that throne. He will build this house you want to build. Yes, he will build this house you want to build. I'll be his father and he'll be my son. And my mercy will stay on him, as hard on him as quickly as it left Saul. I'll establish him in my kingdom forever. Establish him in my house. When God was done talking, David is like, I have to go to the temple. I can't take all this alone. And David gets up, he goes to the temple, he kneels and he says, God. Hello, Fatih. He says, God, thank you for joining. He says, God, who am I? So in Nigeria, we would say this. If you've ever heard of Pidgin English, this is how in Nigeria would say it. Who I be? Waiting I be? Waiting be my papa house? Do you understand what I'm saying? So let me just bring it back for you, just in case you're not a Nigerian and you're watching this. So he said this. David's like, oh, I have to go to the temple. So David gets up and goes to the temple and he says, who am I? Who is my father that you've brought me this far? This small thing, and yet your eyes have... So David was probably saying, I just said, let me build you a house. So I mean, it's nothing big, this small thing, and then you are already speaking far into the future about my life. Your plans for me, I wrote here, are long. A man, like, speaking of me, like a man of high ranking. What can I say for the honor that you have What can I say for the honor according to your heart? There is no one like you, no one besides you, or like we've ever heard of. Ha! And your people Israel, whom you have redeemed from Egypt, as the very one, as your very own, you've chosen to be their God forever. I wrote here in my notes that Dave's humility is unnerving. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I can also do something that can move God to wonder. Because God is like, look at this boy. You want to build me a house? No, I will build you a house. So, as for what you've spoken about, Lord, let it be established forever. Do as you have said. Be magnified, and let the house of David be established before you. As you've decided to build me a house, I must pray before you. You are God, and you have promised this goodness to me. As it has pleased you to bless me, may it be forever. So if someone says something good to you and they feel like you feel blessed by it, make sure you remind God. Like if God said, if you feel like you're stuck. So in reading the Bible, like I said, if you take your time reading a bit and meditating on what you're reading, other things will begin to jump out at you, and you might actually see something about yourself for a particular situation. If you recognize it there, you know, be careful to thank God. The way, like all this drama, go to town with it, okay? Go to town with it. I'm expecting something from God. I'm holding on to something from God. With this thing David has done, when that thing comes, I think I'm going to go to town like this. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to kneel down. I'm going to do the whole drama. Who am I? Who I be? Anyway, let's keep it up. So you and God you are God, and you have promised this goodness to me. So as it has pleased you, may it be forever. Okay? Uh so may it be forever. Later, David attacked the Philistines who took Gath and defeated. So David attacked the Philistines and took Gath. Then he defeated Moab, and in such a way that he was now taking tributes from them. He was now the person people were paying tributes to. Okay. He threatened Hadadezer of Zohar and took chariots from him, 70,000 horsemen, 22,000 soldiers. He killed 22,000 Syrians from Damascus who came to help Hadadezer. He took shields of gold. He took that, and the shields of gold he took from Hadadezer's servants. And bronze. Oh gosh, so let me take that again. He took gold from Hadadezer's servants were many, so he took gold worth uh a lot, shields of gold, a lot of them from Hadadezer's servants, and also took bronze. Those are the things that Solomon would later use to build the temple. King Tao, a guy who was David's ally, sent his son to greet David because they both had a common enemy, Hadadezer. And David had already defeated Hadadezer and spoiled his army. So David dedicated all the articles of gold, silver, and bronze to God. And then from Moab, Edom, Ammon, Amalekites, and Philistines, he got all that. But that means at different times as he went to war, and as it is with people in those days, once you win a war or you experience victory, you plunder the goods of that other nation. You can take the people as your servants or take them as captives of war, and then take all the beautiful artifacts. So David also did likewise, bringing in gold, silver, and bronze and dedicating it to the house of God. Abishai, I think Abishai was one of his top 30, killed 18,000 Edomites. And David reigned everywhere, and God preserved him. In that time, Joab, his chief of army staff, in that time, Joab was his chief of army staff. Jehoshaphat was his record keeper. Zadok and Abimelech were the priests, and Shava, Shavsha was a scribe. Benaniah and Co, including David's sons, some of David's sons were chief ministers at the king's side. So it's like saying something like all these things were happening when David was on the throne and Zadok was the priest, you know. Oh, when Donald Trump was president and Bola Tinubu was president in Nigeria, that was when these things were happening. Just to give you perspective of the timing, that's why that thing was added. But what stood out to me in this story was that David was so touched, and he not only said thank you, God, he still went to reinforce that, God, this thing you've said, please make sure you do it to me. Do it to my household. I'm ready for you. Choose me. Choose me again. But I pray to you and all of that stuff. So that's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful story. So let's look at our New Testament now as we round up. As we round up. So in our New Testament, we are looking at Romans 2, verses 1 to 23. So yesterday, Paul had blasted people, right? He talked about how people needed to be, repent and develop a relationship with God. He talked about the habits of the heart. He talked about people who dwelt. There was a long list, of people who, and that was people who anger, malice, bitterness, gossip, envy, backstabbing, haters of God, insolent, proud, boastful, inventing new ways to sin, disobedient to parents, all of that stuff. He addressed all those people yesterday. So the remaining people who felt, well, that's not for us, he's addressing them here today. So Paul says, you who is listening to me blast those other people from yesterday. You can't judge these people because you are just as bad as they are. When you say they should be punished, you always also condemn yourself. For you who is judging also do the same things, and God will punish you if you cannot avoid. God will punish you. You can't avoid God's judgment if you are doing the same thing as those that God is punishing. God is wonderfully kind and tolerant, isn't he? Or can't you see um it's that his patience is intended to turn you from your sin? Your stubbornness is storing up punishment for yourself, cause one day God's anger will explode. So this is me now paraphrasing what I read in the book of Romans chapters 2 verses 1 to 23. Everyone will get their due share, and eternal life will go to those who do good and seek after what he offers, while wrath will come on those who live for themselves and refuse to obey the truth. Trouble and calamity will come on everyone who disobeys, first the Jew, then the Gentiles, because God has no favorites. Even though the Gentiles didn't have God's written laws, it was assumed now that the Gentiles didn't know anything about God. They all had idols and pagan religions. It was the Jews who knew about about God. So even and then the Jews had this long list of laws from way, 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 way back then, and they have followed those laws. So the Jews kind of like felt superior to other nations. So he's like, even though the Gentiles didn't have God's laws written down, both Jew and Gentiles will be judged by the law. For how you see, you see how they live shows that God's laws is written in their hearts. Their conscience and thoughts accuse or justify them. So basically, what he's saying here is that if you do right and you do right because you feel it is right, that's God's law written in your heart right there. The fact that you are not that you haven't seen a book where they said this was right and this is wrong, but something like an internal direction, internal compass tells you this is how to treat people, this is right, this is wrong. That's God's law written in your heart. God's laws have always been written in people's hearts, but Moses brought it out and put it on a book and gave everybody to follow. And when he wrote down those laws, people went bonkers. They couldn't follow the laws. Anyway, Paul is saying here that God's laws is written in the hearts of everyone, and their conscience and their thoughts reveal that God's laws are written in your heart, and the way they think justifies or condemns them. Okay, so one day everyone's secret life will be judged by God. So this book of Romans is like blasting, blasting, blasting. But let's see how it goes as we make progress. Jews who rely on the law and the Jews rely on the law as a guide, and they feel like they can show others the way. However, instructing Okay, so let me try and read this and explain it, because I wrote this down in like in summary, and I'm finding it difficult to extract all the things I wrote down properly. Jews who rely on the law and boast about being special, you know what he wants. You've been taught, yet you think that you are a guide and a light for others, right? Instructing ignorant people, certain that you have more wisdom and knowledge. Why don't you teach yourselves what you are trying to teach others? If you are teaching them how not to steal, you do not steal. If you are teaching them how not to commit adultery, why don't you stop committing adultery? If you're teaching them how not to worship idols and eat things that have been dedicated to idols, why don't you start? So that's Paul calling people out. Calling people out. This would be extremely offensive in today's world. Like, pastors are not even allowed to teach these things anymore. Because once you start speaking, people will get offended and say you are judging us, you're judging us. Well, I didn't say this, is written in the Bible. Idolatry and all of that, using stolen items, proud of knowing the law but dishonoring God by breaking the laws. You make Gentiles blaspheme God because you fail to keep the law, you know. So the scriptures even say so. So that's Paul blasting us, telling us that, look, those of us who think that we are better, it was really addressing the Jews, but now it's those of us who are already Christians and who have people who are not yet Christians, who judge them, who say, look at those guys who are indulging in sexual immorality, look at those guys who get drunk, look at those guys who steal, who beat, who lie, who are terribly corrupt and cheat people. You're not better than them, because you are doing the things you are doing secretly, and God will expose every secret person and punish you. So both for us who are Christians and for those people who are not Christians, we're all going to come under our judgment if we do not change. Our conduct should show that we believe that Christ died for us and we have changed. And so Paul is just harping on it big time. Okay, so that said, um I wrote here, we're in for a strong ride with Paul, and I think so. I think by the time we're done with Romans, if you're not sure what the Bible was about, you'd have an idea of what the modern day, what a Christian is supposed to be at the end of this. I hope as you're watching this, you are sensing that, okay, let me look inwards and see what I need to drop, what I need to change. Okay, God has a long arm of patience and is ready to patiently wait for you, okay, to come around. All right. I wrote here, our generation will find Paul's words very harsh. I really do think so. But it's not meant to I don't think Paul's intention is to condemn anyone. I think it's just merely to point out what you may not have observed or realized was offensive to God. And Paul is just pointing it out here in Romans. Anyway, Paul may be harsh today in our generation. Back in the day, I don't know if they thought it was harsh or if they thought it was saying the truth. All right. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for now. We've already read our Proverbs, and so I'll see you tomorrow. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for those who left comments, and I'll see you all tomorrow. God bless you.